All right, so next up I'm going to get the pad on. And I don't know if I'm doing this right. No idea. So this pad set comes with foam. This is the key. Let me get the packaging here so you can see what I'm talking about. This is the key pads. 64.5 to 68 Mustang pads with rear quarters. That's what this kit is. And it comes all nice and wrapped up with this foam in between them, but not actually in the pad. And the foam is bigger than the pad, so I believe I'm supposed to trim this down to get the nice same shape and put it inside this pad, how it unfolds like that. I don't know if that's right or not. So that's what I'm going to go with. I also don't know if this should go up or down, because the other difference is, I'll show you on this one, the sewn on plastic is on the bottom. So you see it right there? The sewn on plastic is on bottom. And so these flaps go like that. And so you'd think you'd want that sewn on the plastic to push down on the flap with the screws. It's, again, sewn on there. But I really don't want this flap viewable to the passengers in the vehicle, which means I want that flap facing up. So I'm getting the full strength and support of the plastic along the bottom strip of the pad, but not pushing down on all of the layers of the pad. So I'm not sure what's right there. I will say the pad that was on the car originally, it was just this, which is like a foam liner, and it has a kind of a plastic back, and then this is like a felt or headliner material, the typical headliner material, and then it's all just glued together. And it didn't even have the plastic on the ends like it's supposed to have. And I only had 3 screws in one and 2 screws in the other. So this was just not done right at all. But the next thing I need to worry, after I've made those decisions, I don't know if those are right, drop it in the comments. If they're not, I can't find any information on the pads other than they go here and they go here, and but nothing specific on the pad itself. No directions from Key. No directions from CJ or NPD. I've looked at the Vintage Mustang forums. I can't find anybody that talks about the pads other than the distances between the bows and making sure you've got that squared away. And then that convertible top guideline document that I found, it talks about how important the plastic is and how important it is to be sewed to the plastic. But again, it looks like it's a single layer piece of fabric that individual is using in the pictures. It doesn't look like this, double layer stuff. And I don't see any foam being used in anybody's stuff. So I don't know if it's right. Leave a comment. It'll be too late by the time I read your comment, because by the time I post this, it'll be work that's already done. But maybe if I'm not too far along, I can go back and make the change. Not sure. The next step, if that's my decision, the next step I have to worry about is the screws that hold down the pad in the front. And really, it's the screws that hold down the pad all the way if you have the screw-in spots at the second and third bow. I don't. I'm using the tack strips. That's the way mine was originally, so that's what I'm going with here. But if you have all of those screws, it would be a total of 8 per side. All of them are real short flat top screws, and they look like this. And so there's a little washer and then that flat screw, and it's not a very long screw. Well, they don't make this guy, or at least they don't reproduce this guy. And so that guideline shows you how to take a stainless steel screw, and it is a 832 by 1/2 inch with the machined flathead, right? And you get these off of Amazon. I can link them or whatever, look them up. cheap, and you get a box of 100 of them for pretty inexpensive, or yeah, 50 of them. Get a box of 50 of them for real inexpensive. Has this been blurry the whole time? There we go. Yes, no, that's still not right. There we go. Okay, and then these stainless steel countersunk screws, but you have to bang them out a specific way to get this, right? Because you're looking for this profile, a real flat profile. And so that guideline shows you how to do it. It's written down, right? It shows you how to do it. And again, you go to the vintage forums to get that stuff. You know, reach out to me and I'm happy to share it. But then you create this countersunk hole in a piece of metal, and then you're going to take. Let me set this up for you real quick. So you're going to take this this screw and put it in that, right? And then over the top of a vise, you're going to set that guy in there, and you're going to hit it with a hammer. And what that's going to do is flatten out that bevel and give you this style washer. It will be wider, obviously, and so the guide tells you to trim that down with like a bench grinder. I'm going to see if it'll work, and I can give you an example of one that I've done already. So just doing an initial test hit, I've flattened these out, right? And so you get a much deeper, not only deeper this way, right? Much deeper profile, also much larger diameter. If I could hold on to it. Much larger diameter on the outside. I'm going to see if the outside will work. I think the depth is not going to work because we want it to be, I think, real shallow like that. So I'll probably take the depth out of it and keep the other part. But you can see, I mean, you get past the shoulder of that bolt anyway with that depth, and it's nice and wide. This is not done well. It was, I think, my very first one. But I'll show you how I do it with the hammer out on the vise. Big hammer. Okay. See, it's all nice and flat now. Fills in that shoulder quite nicely. It's just too big a diameter. I'm going to see if that works, and I don't have to. I hope I don't have to trim that back, because frankly, that extra support around that would be good, but it may just be too big. So I'll go check that now. Up here in these spots, I don't think that's going to be that big a deal. Where it won't work is right down here for that fourth screw. Man, I'm having a hard time with the focus tonight. With that hole down here, I feel like that is, yeah, that kind of proves it out right there. That won't go down low enough for that to work. So I will have to trim at least one washer, or I could even use the old washers for those outside ones, and then just use new washers for these inside ones. Because I think I can center the rest of these up. I think I can center the rest of these up and they'll work around the outsides of these. All right, next day, I've run into a couple of problems. But I'm working through them. So the pad had some kind of pre-stamped holes in this plastic. So I went through those, but it ends up being a little too thick for the, it did align well with these two holes, but it ends up being too thick on this side and rides up on this edge. So I trimmed the pad back there, and that works. The other issue is that this hole down here is my bottom hole, is on the other side of this seam. I'm not a big fan of that. I'll barely be able to get an edge. So I'm going to re-drill a hole up here. That's a 9/32 hole, and you can use one of the old screws that are self-tappers to dig that hole for you. And then it's the same thing over here on top. This hole comes out to where it's right on the edge of the pad, so I'm gonna have to bring in another hole here, and so then I'll have the 4 going across. The other thing is making those washers. They definitely are too big, so making, you know, flattening out these washers, they work, but they're just too big. So what I did was ground down, and this one I'm not done with, it's not perfectly round yet, but ground down the back to make it a little shorter, and made the diameter, the overall diameter, smaller as well. So ran into those issues. Oh, the other thing was the foam inside. Putting it up on the edge, all the way up on the edge, makes this whole thing too thick. It's kind of hard to make out the foam. But so I put it right behind that. I think it's going to ride fine in there, especially considering it's going to get stapled on the second, third, and fourth bows. So it should be good like that. All right, I've got the pads in on both sides. Again, mine are stapled here in the center. They don't have the bolts. So, and then I've got them stapled back here and trimmed out, or trimmed off. The oh, those just some threads I need to cut. The bow length, from this edge to this edge is 21 inches, and then the second and third bow are basically 17 inches apart. So that is measurements that I not only validated with my with taking my old top off, you know, did all the measuring there. Not only did I validate those measurements, but those are the measurements that I see in all of the manuals, all of the guides. So this side is done as well. So now it'll be the rear window. The problem is the rear window is all wavy, so I need to set it in the sun. It's nice thick plastic. I need to set it in the sun. I'm not a huge fan of this. You probably aren't going to be able to make it out. Yeah, right there on my finger. Well, I think you just barely caught it. Yeah, right there is the circles where they've basically made them a spot all the way down this window for the tack strip to align with. But so you're going to have to align the center of the tack strip with that rather than it have like a chalk line. They did do a chalk line on the rear quarters for that tack strip, so that's nice. At least have that. And this was a nice touch. Where you pull the tension wire through, they actually already ran a string through that for you, so you don't have to run a wire through that. So that was kind of nice of them to do that. This kit came with the new wire on and new wire on ends. All right, so the next thing we've got to work on is the rear window. And what I did for this, they have those little dots that you're supposed to center on each one of the bolt holes of the tack strip. I went ahead and painted them black, or hit them with a permanent marker black, so that way they're much easier to see. I'm gonna go ahead and start stapling that. I'll set up the GoPro so I can film this whole bit. attached at the fourth bow. I went ahead and put in the quarter trim pads. Looks like I had a staple for this come out, so I will reattach that. I'm not even sure these came on this car. I've looked at multiple installations on a 66 Mustang, and it didn't have quarter trim pads in them on YouTube. So I looked at multiple YouTube videos that did specifically a 66 Mustang convertible top, and it didn't have they didn't put quarter trim pads in them. From the convertible top guideline that I've looked at, the quarter trim pad is often not used, but should be, and I think came from the factory. So not 100% sure there, but I thought I'd go ahead and put them in because that'll complete the look. I didn't do a great job of putting them in. You can see this one still needs to be pulled tight, but I've got a little bit of a ripple there. They both kind of have that. That's the fold mark on where they were. But basically what I'm trying to say is they're pretty much there for looks. From the inside, it'll be more insulation. It'll look better. So next, I'm going to first fix this guy, and then next I have to attach these to the tack strip. And they give you a line that's put across the whole thing for you to attach it. So that's what I'm doing next. So I'm just lining that up with the edge. That's something I pulled off of one of those other YouTube videos. Again, I don't know if it's right. We'll get to the end and see if it's aligned properly, I suppose. That's, again, that line is right on the edge of the tack strip, so hopefully we are in a good spot with that. I'll go from there. So I've got a regular pair of scissors I've been using. They work pretty well. I actually have these that are from RC cars, so they're really sharp, small scissors that have that bend in them, and that helps to cut on a curve. It's kind of meant for cutting the wheel wells out of plastic RC car bodies. But since they're nice and sharp, they do a good job of getting in here and trimming out easily. And then I can you see how it's nice and easy to do a curve like that. And so I can get that whole bolt hole cut out without any issues. So, and get that nice curve. So, that's what I'm using. Seems to work well. Not exactly upholstery scissors, but they work well for what I'm trying to do. Been having issues with the convertible top. Pretty sure it had everything to do with the top being too cool. So it's way more pliable. I had it sitting out here in the sun. It's only about a 75-degree day, but it's been getting hammered in the sun. So it's much more pliable, and I already immediately noticed the rear window started sagging. So I went ahead and pulled the staples back out of the rear window now that it's nice and pliable. Should have done this the first time, mistake on my part. I'm going to pull that nice and tight, make sure I've got that in a good spot, and then reset this top. I'm going to be completely honest. The further I got into this and started messing with it, and couldn't get the top to align, couldn't get anything to work right. I mean, hell, the top just flat out looked too small, which I knew had everything to do with stretching it, but my concern was that once I stapled it, that was it. But I've got an attack strategy now. I don't know if it's going to work well. We'll find out. Well, my plan is they tell you exactly where to staple on the bottom of the window and the bottom of the actual top itself on the quarters. They tell you where to put that tack strip. Then they also tell you where to put the top on the fourth bow, because there's two tears or slits, if you will, in the top. So that's supposed to align right in the center of that. And so you literally chalk line between those two, align the center of that, make sure it's centered left to right, and then centered, and then tack that, and then that's your fourth bow. And then you move on to the front. So if my pads are right and my lower is right, and then I get that set up right with a nice tight window, it should be set. Then I just have to fiddle with the very front of it, and then maybe fiddle with the quarters a little bit if there are any wrinkles that I need to get out. I don't know. I waver in my confidence back and forth, but that is my plan right now. is to now get now that it's warmed up, get the window stapled back, and then put the top in that spot. So that's what we're doing next. Unstapled the window and then double checked my bow height, which is from the top edge of this chrome to the back edge here, 21 inches, which is what this piece of wood is in length, and it was actually too long. It was too short of a distance between here and here. My pads had stretched, which is absolutely possible, especially given the heat. So went ahead and pulled the pads. Gonna try redoing the pads and then the top. As you can see, I'm running out of sunlight, so hopefully it doesn't cool off too quickly. All right, so in order to get this where it needs to be, which is this needs to be center of the bar. That's your mark to go by on both sides. I've had to raise the top. Now, I did have to redo the window, did have to redo my pads, but this bar is exactly where it needs to be. They tell you where to staple the quarters. They tell you where to staple the window on the lower tack strip. So theoretically I should be there. I think this just needs to stretch more. So I've got it set. It's propped. It's set. I made sure it's center. So might not be able to see my marks, but it's center. I also made sure, these kind of feel the same on both sides and they're grabbed. So I'm gonna staple each corner, then chalk line it and staple across. This is kind of make or break. Here we go. Okay, so stapled across the top. Obviously got some adjustments I need to make here. So I think on both sides I kind of have this rippling effect. I think what has to happen is this whole quarter has to be kind of pulled that way a little bit. So hopefully I can pull that off. This feels like it's not quite right there, you can see. So hopefully I can pull that kind of down. It seems a little like it needs to be pulled tighter across the bow there. I did double and triple check center on that before I stapled, so I know it's good and centered. You see we kind of have the same effect on both sides where it's pulled over. So hopefully, pulling tight here will help. I don't have the tension cables in there yet, so that'll certainly help. I'll get those in there next, but you can see we kind of got that ripple effect going both sides. So I think what has to happen is, this has to come in slightly to pull those wrinkles out. That has to come in slightly to pull those wrinkles out, but otherwise I think we've got a pretty good thing going. And then we'll have to work on the front, of course.